Kenny Cunningham, a very good morning.
Morning, lads.
Morning, Kenny.
This was pretty fascinating stuff last night, Kenny. When we were watching it, we were eager to actually get your take this morning. I'd say you were salivating over what Pep Guardiola was doing last night. What in your view, did he do last night? What was the main talking points in terms of how he set up his team?
Oh, it's classic 4-4-2, lads.
It's as simple as that, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing, really. Yeah, early on in the game, obviously a lot of discussion about it starting 11, but once you decided on that, once you saw the names, immediately you're shuffling the pieces around the board thinking how he's going to set up. Ideally, with those players on the starting 11, lads, you were looking really at a kind of, generally the way he likes to set his team up, 4-3-3 with Jesus up top, Silva and Mahrez either side, and a midfield three of De Bruyne, Gundogan and Rodri sitting. That's invariably what you'd expect to see, but obviously he changed, he surprised us, and really went with a 4-4-2 formation. The decision to put De Bruyne kind of high up the pitch down the middle is probably not the first time he's done it. If you think back to the Man United game at Old Trafford not too long ago previously, he played him as kind of that false number 9, lads. But that was in his orthodox 4-3-3 that I was speaking about. So that wouldn't be highly unusual. But the kind of playing up front with Silva kind of in a 2 did surprise me, to be honest with you. Personally, I'd still argue that with those players and in that system, if you're going to play a 4-4-2 system, for me, I still would have flipped Jesus and played him up front with De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva off the left. Because I think De Bruyne, probably the best player on the pitch last night, probably would have dovetailed better with Jesus high up the pitch. Silva and De Bruyne are kind of, I'm sure maybe one of the reasons he played him there was at times to get an overload in midfield. He'd end up with that box shape in midfield with Gundogan and Rodrigo and kind of dominating that central area of the pitch. And maybe we saw that to an extent. I wouldn't say they actually dominated possession, but I still feel at times they didn't hurt maybe Madrid enough in behind. And with Jesus there, who I'm a huge fan of, I think with him with De Bruyne there, they would have dovetailed better. De Bruyne dropping in, receiving the ball deep, and Jesus, the quality of his runs in behind, down the sides of defenders, which there is a small weakness with Madrid with Ramos in particular. I actually thought they let them off the hook a little bit by playing as they did. Jesus played great on the left wing, don't get me wrong. He was up and down, tracking people. The defensive side of his game was great, and he still offered an attacking threat from that left wing position, driving on the inside. But I think we saw, lads, when Jesus went into his preferred central position in the second half when Sterling came on, he carried it even more of a threat and had more of an impact on the game. So, yeah, I'm sure Guardiola will be getting a lot of kind of claps on the back, and this was amazing. And he's got a lot of courage to make this kind of call in such a game as important as crucial to Manchester City. But for me, by actually shuffling the pieces a little bit more on the pitch, they could have been even more effective than they were.
Yeah, like that's a great point, because I was actually going to be devil's advocate there until you actually made that exact point. Like, they were 1-0 down playing this game. Like, this pragmatic approach was fantastic, and there's a novelty to it, and it was unbelievably intriguing to see. But they still went 1-0 down, and it was only when the game opened up and they kind of reverted to type that they actually regained the lead. Like, I know that may sound a little bit harsh on what Pep did last night, because I think he does deserve a bit of credit, but that's really what we saw. It was the chaos that they actually thrived in last night.
Yeah, I wouldn't say chaos is too strong to be. I thought there was a bit of structure, obviously, to what they were doing. I like the fact maybe Gundogan playing alongside Rodrigo as a pair in central midfield now, and I think that gave a more solid defensive base in that central area of the pitch. They didn't vacate that area too often, the two Manchester City central midfield players. So you kind of make that an argument from a defensive point of view. Did they make themselves a little more secure in there? For me, the biggest question was really Fernandinho sitting on the bench. I mean, I was speaking about the Chelsea game, I was saying about, like, when Kante's not in the Chelsea team, like, I have heart palpitations, particularly if I was a Chelsea supporter. Well, Fernandinho's the same for Manchester City for me when he's not on the pitch, and particularly at the expense of Otamendi coming into the pitch. That was a strange one for me. Guardiola alluded maybe his question mark about physically a little bit of a drop-off in terms of maybe suffering a little bit because of his age, but I mean, I'd take Fernandinho 60-70% fit ahead of Otamendi 100%, and I think they got away with that when Otamendi caused the forced goal, played a horrible ball into Rodrigo, got himself caught out of position. and cost them the goal. And Fernandinho coming on in that centre-half position at Laporte's expense, particularly second half. Maybe they had a bit of a wobble and Real Madrid got the goal. He was outstanding, made 2 amazing interceptions immediately after the goal and kept him in the game. So that was a big decision. Before you put the 11 on the pitch, actually Fernandinho on the pitch, I thought he took a calculated risk. I didn't see the reasons behind that. You can never make an argument for me with Fernandinho on the bench and Otamendi on the pitch in any position ahead of that. So I'd certainly question that decision, leaving Fernandinho on the bench. And like was on, they didn't suffer. The Real Madrid team, potentially a couple of years ago at their best, Owen, maybe would have hurt them a lot more than they did last night. This is a Real Madrid team which has lost its kind of its punch. You know, they're suffering kind of one or two areas of the pitch. There's still some individual talent sprinkled around the pitch, but just don't play with that kind of personality, that arrogance that they did some years ago. So actually Manchester City actually didn't have to be at their best last night and probably should have made it more comfortable.
Kenny, are players and defenders in particular, are they shunned now by having the old adage of if in doubt, get it out? Because you could see last night when Kyle Walker didn't boot it into the stands, you'd Kevin De Bruyne kind of going after him on the pitch about it. But if he did boot it into the stands and did that consistently, is Pep and the rest of the management kind of saying, listen, let's keep the ball down and let's play the game here a bit?
Yeah, I think you're right, Kieran. Generally speaking, didn't quite think that was the case last night. I thought he'd actually dug Otamendi out, Walker, to be honest with you. His recovery's very good, Kieran Walker's, you know, because of his speed. He gets himself out of jail sometimes. The starting position at times isn't the greatest, gets himself too high. But his recovering position was very good last night. He actually got himself goal side of Vinicius. Just laboured a little bit. I think he might have had that thought process that you're talking about. Didn't think necessarily had to kick it into the stand. He was almost facing his own goal. Could have easily played it backwards towards his goalkeeper. But you're probably right in terms of this is how they want to play. This is what they want to do. So he's probably thinking, I can have another touch here. You maybe dribble across the pitch myself. And when he was having those thoughts, the ball was stolen off him and ended up in the back of the net. But that'd be pretty kind of typical of a Manchester City. Their big weakness has always been Kieran down that right-hand side. Walker and Otamendi in particular, when they play down that side of the pitch, they're always going to give up opportunities. It's always been a weakness in the team, so that was no big surprise. But it was a great response from City. Obviously, the substitutions came, the kind of dynamism of Sterling down the left-hand side, getting an added impetus. And for me, again, like I'll say it again, Jesus. I know a lot of people screaming about Aguero not playing before the game. What's he thinking of him? How can you leave Aguero out of the team? But I think they do this kid a injustice, Kieran Jesus. I don't think people realise how good he is. I think he's absolutely outstanding player. I don't think there's a big drop-off in Manchester City's performances when he plays ahead of Aguero. I mean, his attitude more so than anything else. He's had to play second fiddle to Aguero for a long time, but every time he's on the pitch, Kieran, he impacts the game. When he starts or when he comes off the bench, his attitude, his mentality is absolutely fantastic. Scoring goals, creating goals. You saw the defensive side of his game last night. Asked to play as a left winger, no problem, Gaffer. I'll track those runs of Carvajal all day, all long, and they'll still impact the game at the other end. Play centre forward, yeah, no problem, Gaffer. Put me up there as well the last 25 minutes. I'll impact the game as well, which he did. We saw those natural centre forward instincts in terms of getting his first goal. If you watch him, he actually made a quick little dart to the near post when De Bruyne got into the box, didn't receive the ball, and immediately he's on the move again, checking his shoulder, kind of spinning in behind Ramos to get his goal, and then obviously the lead up to Ramos sending off. So he's an outstanding young player, and he's the reason why Manchester City won't have to spend big 100, 150 million in the transfer market when Aguero jumps on his private plane and heads back to Buenos Aires in a couple of years.
And when do you think that change comes where Jesus goes from number 2 to number 1? How long do you think that's going to take him?
I don't think he's far off, Kieran,
okay,
for the reasons that I've said. Honestly, Aguero's always the one. It's a massive game tomorrow, Kieran, with Champions League final. You had to pick a Manchester City team. You put Aguero ahead of him.
Yeah.
But if you were to break it down, Kieran, in terms of why would you actually? Well, why does Aguero go? Why does he play ahead of him? People would throw maybe stats at you in terms of his previous history, goals. Have a look at the amount of goals Aguero scored. But if actually break their games down, both of them, there's very little between them. You actually argue in terms of mobility and quickness, speed of foot. Actually, Jesus has the advantage over Aguero. There's really not much between them for me. That's a great compliment to Jesus because Aguero's the best around. And even his performance last night, I think there's an argument really that he's knocking on the door for a position, one of those wide areas. Though I do feel as if obviously Sterling and Mahrez for me has been great, probably their best forward the last couple of months playing off the right hand side. So he's just going to have to be patient, probably even going forward, and he'll get his fair share of the goals. Guardiola has to give him his fair share of the games because they can't afford to lose that kid in the next year or two, getting too disenchanted. Kieran not getting enough game time, and I think he rotates it pretty well, Guardiola, in terms of him. And Aguero high up the pitch, got to be careful with Aguero as well with his injury record. So, yeah, funny old game last night, generally speaking. Manchester City with a better team. He did surprise us. But, I still feel as if they let Manchester City, Real Madrid off the hook just ever so slightly in terms of how they did set up.
What did he make of Sergio Ramos' performance last night, Kenny?
Yeah, well, I had a sympathy for him.
What do you think of the red card? Come on, give me your thoughts as a king of a centre half. Give me your thoughts on his red card. Should VAR have looked at it? I don't know. In terms of how VAR interprets it in the Champions League, Kieran, it's slightly different, isn't it? How they look at the VAR and how they encourage the referees to operate. Look, if he had looked at it, I don't think he would have changed it. Kieran, you kind of know different competition. Referees referee the game a little bit differently. European games, international football, as opposed to your bread and butter week and week. I think if you're lucky enough to play those games, you realise how the referees referee differently. And the fact that he put his hand on his shoulder last night, I'd agree with you there. If you're suggesting there wasn't a huge amount of contact, it wasn't sufficient. He didn't get his hold of his jersey and pull him around. Yeah.
I think there was a minimum amount of contact even with his foot, lads. I don't know if you saw that. A very small bit of contact actually with his feet as he went through. But Jesus, again, he's smart, lads. I'm saying again about his qualities. He's smart, and he knew as soon as he took that touch in front of Ramos, he was just waiting for any kind of contact. And Ramos had sympathy for him. He got himself goal side. It wasn't his own fault. Casemiro sold him down the river with the back pass to Varane, so he had to get back. And I've been in that position myself. You're wrong side of the defender, maybe through no fault of your own. You know he's coming in a goal, 1v1 with the goal. You feel as if you have to do something, Kieran. You probably know yourself as a sportsman. You feel as if you have to disrupt them in some respect. You can't clip his heels. That's an obvious free kick and a red card. But you've got to make some kind of physical contact, even just putting your hands on him, something, get hold of his arm, just tug him a little bit, put him off balance. I think that's what he tried to do. He took a calculated risk. I think some referees might have let him get away with it, but the fact he actually made contact with his shoulder and put his kind of hands on him, I think really sealed his fate.
Is City now fairly heavy favourites to go through, Kenny? Any concern though? No, okay, we'll take the word heavy.
To go through? I thought you meant to win it. Sorry, Owen. Sorry, I was...
To go through,
way ahead of you there.
To go through is what I mean. However, the Aymeric Laporte injury, does that give you any concern at all about Manchester City in the second leg?
Yeah, it would a little bit, because to the extent that it means Otamendi's got to play. So that, like I said, that always makes me nervous. You would imagine him and Fernandinho. I don't think Stones necessarily be available for that one. He might surprise again, maybe back three. I'm not too sure, but yeah, it does make me nervous. But overall, I mean, I've seen Real Madrid play a few times this season. I'm just not sure they have it in them. I can see a better performance from Real Madrid. I can see them actually going there and scoring, no problems. But I just think Manchester City, again, if they get it right for the first leg, and like I said, I think there's more to come. I think they could swamp them a little bit in the second leg from an attacking point of view in terms of the players on the pitch. Sterling, 100% match fit. But by that stage, he's got good options up the pitch at the moment. Mahrez in good form, his decision making with Aguero and Jesus, like we've spoken about. De Bruyne will probably drop back into a fair position, maybe a little bit deeper. So I just think they got too much firepower for them, too much dynamism in the team, Manchester City. And if the Man City crowd get involved as well and energise the stadium, just feel as if they have far too much for them. So no, I wouldn't be hopeful at all for Real Madrid's chances.
Great stuff, Kenny. Chat to you soon.
Thanks, Kenny.
Nice one, lads.